Did you survive the holidays? It's been a while. It's been a hot second since we've done a Tech Tip Tuesday, but now that the holidays are over and we can look forward to 2025 and start focusing in on all of those business goals that we've been dreaming about, I figured we'd start today with some common mistakes that I see as a tech editor. Before we hop in, I want to let you know about something that's going to be happening in just a few weeks, and that is the very first pattern writing sprint. These are structured co-working sessions to help you get your pattern written, which can be really tricky. The beginning of the year is such a fun time. You have all of these dreams and goals for the year, and it's so energizing. But as time goes on, it can be really hard to kind of execute on those goals, especially if you're running your business as a side hustle. So these sessions are basically designed to help you get stuff done so that you don't kind of lose track of those goals by the time the end of the year rolls around. They are totally free. I'm going to leave the link to it in the description below. Make sure you sign up if that's something you're interested in. As a tech editor, I get to read a lot of patterns, and so there's some common themes and common typos that tend to pop up in almost every pattern. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I just want to mention that all of these kind of common mistakes and things to look for come directly from my self-editing checklist. That's a free downloadable you can grab on my website, and it kind of walks you through the different editing passes that I take as a tech editor to help you start to look for these kinds of common formatting and errors that you see in quilt patterns and get rid of them before you send it off to a tech editor. The feedback I've heard from the people that have used it so far is that it's super, super helpful. A lot of times as you're reading through your own pattern, you kind of go blind to the mistakes and typos just because you've read it so many times. You've been staring at this thing for hours and hours and hours as you write the pattern. And so your brain starts to fill in those gaps and you can't see the things anymore. The self-editing checklist basically allows you to work through it pass by pass, looking for all of these specific mistakes so that you don't forget any of these things, and also helps you see those mistakes that you've kind of been skipping over. So definitely give that a download if you are trying to kind of improve the consistency and quality of your patterns without doubling your tech editing bill. So the first really common mistake I see is page numbers or step numbers out of order. So if you're using a software that kind of does auto numbering, this is less likely, like InDesign, which is what I use. But some programs don't do that, right? So you'll have multiple text boxes and you've got to manually number those things. And whenever you're doing that, it's just really ripe for something ending up out of order, especially if you're using something like Canva or Word. So once you've kind of got your pattern written, as you're kind of finalizing everything, is to send it off to your tech editor or testers. Go through the entire pattern looking for just these two things. Are the page numbers correct, right? Just scroll through very, very quickly, make sure everything's sequential, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Nothing out of place, nothing repeated, nothing skipped. Same thing with step numbers. Just have a real quick look at those and make sure that you're not missing any and you're not repeating any. It's really common to see like 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 7, something along those lines. Really easy, quick and easy check to just kind of improve the quality and professionality of your pattern instantly. The second one that is really, really common is incorrect step number references. So this is where you have something in your pattern that says repeat steps 2 through 4. Frequently, I will see repeat steps 2 through 4 when the steps you should be repeating are actually 3 through 7. Usually this happens because you've added in a step somewhere, you've modified something, and now the numbers that go with the steps that were originally referenced have kind of shifted down a little bit. It's super, super common, but just kind of once you get everything written and finalized, you have all of your steps, figures, text in there, going through and just kind of looking at those areas where you've got step references really, really quickly and just checking that the reference steps make sense. They're the ones you intended. Really easy way to avoid big errors. The third thing that I see a lot, and this one's a little bit trickier to catch, are diagrams not matching the instructions. So one example of this would be what you see kind of down in the bottom left there. You've got A, B, C, D, and E pieces, and maybe the instructions say that you actually need A, B, C, D, and F. And now your diagram doesn't match your instructions. And so which one's correct, right? Which piece is actually there? Going through your diagrams and just making sure that all the labels you have in there, all the colors for your fabrics actually match the fabrics they're intended, and just kind of doing that quick gut check. That's a really great way to catch these errors, because as we're making diagrams, we tend to do a lot of copy and pasting, especially if you've got multiple color variations of the same block. So just going through and kind of doing that final check to make sure that you haven't missed anything when you were constructing those diagrams is a really easy way to kind of head off a lot of these issues that tend to cause some pretty big problems for your reader. The last thing that I see in like probably 75% of the patterns that I edit are inconsistent lines and diagrams. So what I mean by that, and you can kind of see that in the top left there, some of the lines will be fatter than the rest, right? So we've kind of got this center yellow square that's got a bolder line than the rest of the pieces. It just makes it look less professional. You'll also see kind of a thinner line or no line around some of the pieces. And frequently this happens if you're not exporting in like a vectorized format. So if you're using like JPEGs or something like that you take a very large photo and you shrink it down and make it very small, or vice versa, and things start to get pixelated. You might have had lines in the original diagram, but because of the way that it's been resized, they aren't necessarily rendering in the software that you are laying out your quilt pattern in. And so they kind of disappear when you export it to a PDF, which is kind of the thing that you should be checking all of these things against, because that's what it's going to look like to the reader, right? And so just kind of having a quick look, do one pass through your pattern. It shouldn't take you more than a minute or two, and just make sure that all of the lines in your diagrams are consistent. You don't have like really fat lines in one diagram, really skinny lines in another diagram, and you're not missing any lines. If you're choosing to use lines, or vice versa, if you don't use any outlines, making sure that they all have no outlines and you don't have one diagram that's got a stray outline somewhere. Making sure it looks really consistent. This isn't going to impact the followability of your pattern, right? It's not going to mess up whether or not the reader can actually make the pattern, but it is a really, really easy way to make your pattern just look that much more professional. If you've got pixelated diagrams, inconsistent lines and diagrams, it just makes that pattern feel homemade, right? It just feels so much less professional, which is not really the ideal thing. You want your reader to be thinking about your pattern, especially if they've paid for it. You want it to feel really professional, really well done, and this is a really easy way to help accomplish that. Alrighty, those are kind of the 4 most common mistakes that I see as a tech editor. There are many, many more. Again, most of those are encapsulated in this self-editing guide that you can download from my website. I will put the link in the caption below. Make sure you check it out. It is super helpful. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for Tech Tip Tuesday.